Welcome back. I'm glad you're still with us here on Morning at NTV, and it's now time for the Kickstarter, putting the extractives at the center of our political campaigns and how everything rolls out in as far as those that may be sitting on some really good resources can utilize them. I'll be introducing my guests very shortly, but our preamble as Uganda prepares for another defining electoral cycle. Extractives must move from the periphery to the core of political discourse. The 2025 Citizens Convention on Extractives provides a unique space for this transition where citizens, civil society, as well as policymakers converge to reframe oil, gas and mining not as elite projects but as key public goods. The season offers a strategic window to demand that every manifesto answers the question, who truly benefits from Uganda's natural wealth. I'm joined on set by Winnifred Ngabiirwe, the CEO at Global Rights Alert. Many thanks for joining us.
Good morning, thank you.
Many thanks for joining us too. Patrick Katabaazi Kiconco, Technical Advisor at the Center for Budget and Tax Policy.
Yes, good morning, Chris, and good morning to our viewers.
Great. Let me begin with Madame Ngabiirwe to take us through the 2025 Citizens Convention on Extractives and what this underpins.
Thank you. So the Citizens Convention on Extractives, and I want to first break down what extractives means. In simple language, really our natural resources, our minerals,
in the ground,
our oil, our gas.
Ah, wow.
And our sun at this time, because we're also going to be using it for renewable energy. So what are we looking at? So the convention, which is going to be in its 8th year today, brings together communities which host our natural resources. So we have people from the Albertine region where we have our oil. We have people from Karamoja, which is rich in, marble, gold, granite. We have people from Kisoro, which is rich in tin. And we have people from, Uganda region, which is transporting our oil from Hoima to Tanga. So groups that host infrastructures, groups that host minerals, groups that host investments that are in oil, gas and mining. So they come together and interface with government, Ministry of Energy, for example, NEMA, Revenue Authority, Auditor General Government, civil society, and private investors. So you have small-scale miners, you have medium-scale miners, you have artisanal miners, and large-scale miners in the room. And the question is, what minerals do we have? What kind of investments do we have? And how are the investments impacting positively or negatively on the communities, on the nation, and what should we do then to make sure that everyone benefits? So it's an accountability platform that has been running for the last 8 years today. And we really want to look at the past, what lessons can we learn, but most importantly also inform the future. So this year we are dreaming, we are having a 20-year dream. So we are looking at Africa's energy forecast 2045 and looking at the role of citizen agency, and we're asking ourselves, other than a government person, what other roles should be played and by who? So we are dreaming with young people, we are dreaming with women groups, we are dreaming with businesses, we are dreaming with civil society organizations, and we want to stop crying what has gone wrong, but just to inform the future. How do we inform the future? How do we position ourselves to benefit? What kind of skills do we need? What kind of financing do we need? What kind of partnerships and networks and collaborations do we need so that the future benefits all of us rather than a selected few?
Okay, you're in other words going to reap the Book of Lamentations.
We are reaping it, yes. But we are also putting in place systems that enable us to handle the negative impacts, the upcoming, so we mitigate them from happening, but of course positioning ourselves to benefit from the natural resources that we have, knowing that our national development plan really talks much about using money from natural resources to develop the country, knowing that now all political parties are going to be talking about our oil, our gas, our other minerals. So we want to question them. What kind of plans do they have in the short, in the medium, and in the long term?
All right. We'll be looking forward to those questions, especially at the convention. Here, I'll be asking a little bit later what they ought to put into consideration. But allow me go to Patrick Katabaazi, Kiconco, the technical advisor of the Center for Budget and Tax Policy. The energy transition is something that has gripped much of the world, and Africa is widely seen as being on the front. What is the reading of the landscape like for organizations like yours that are working to ensure that this particular conversation moves from the periphery to the core?
Yes, of course, we have had traditional energy sources. For example, we have hydroelectricity, we have had oil, and now the world is moving to a stage of transition where we are talking about green energy, where we are talking about replacement for products that ordinarily have been adverse to our environment, in which case there's that transition that is ongoing. And you've noticed that with this type of transition, there has been some negative reports about our prospects for oil, for example. Here you are saying we are hinging our future development on oil revenue, but yet at the same time the world is moving. The world is moving to another stage. Yeah. So this is the debate that we have been having, but at least we also know that this transition has not effectively taken place, and we cannot lose sight of the potential benefits that we stand to have at this point in time. It is true that our oil revenues that had been anticipated to start flowing in have not yet come in, especially so the ones that are related to the actual oil drops. And of course this has been postponed, as you know, to next year, 2026. So we hope that as we talk about transition, as we talk about alternatives, but as Uganda, let us also first get this money that is coming in oil. Yeah. Have developments, very fast, very effective, very efficient developments that can help us deal with some of the negative or adverse effects of the transitions that we are talking about. If oil is no longer necessary, then what have we done with the revenues that have come out of that transition at this point? And that's why we're talking about transparency. That's why we're talking about citizens' engagement. You realize that beyond oil, other minerals that we have at play in this country, we expect every year, especially so if we compare the targets for the previous years, to earn about 100 billion shillings in terms of royalties. And what we actually get is almost like 1 billion. So which points to a bigger problem relating to harnessing this potential benefit in terms of assessments, in terms of actual collection, and in terms of actual disbursement. So when you're talking about the 99% gap in this particular area, it means that you have these communities that are supposed to be direct beneficiaries. Mining in itself has some adverse effects on these communities. Of course, yeah. Money comes to an investor and the community does not benefit. Look at the Mining and Minerals Act, for example. It says 70% of the revenue from mining should go to the center, 15% to the district, 10% to the sub-county, and 5% to the landowner. When you flip that to the Public Finance Management Act, it talks about 94% of the oil revenues going to the center, and then 6% going to the lowest level, going to the community and going to the local government. Of course, the Public Finance Management Act lacks specificity regarding to how that streams down the local community. Of course, save for areas like Munyoro, where the kingdom is allocated, I think, 1%. So here now, we are saying that if you put citizens at the heart of this conversation, right questions will be asked.
That is right.
We have oil, which is a non-renewable resource. We have tin, we have iron ore, we have limestone. All these are non-renewable. At some point, they'll be depleted.
That is right.
But before they get depleted, how have they benefited the community? How have they benefited the community that is where these minerals are being extracted, the communities that are surrounding, and also the nation at large? Because if we do not foster, or if we do not advocate for this transparency, then we are going to have these resources that have been depleted, but we have not gained anything much from them. So the transition that you are talking about is natural. We cannot fight it. But before it takes root, what we already have on the table, let us maximize the benefits that comes out of it for our own development. And then let us also use some of this money that is coming, some of this revenue that is coming from these extractives, to also reorient this country to adaptive energy use that is more relevant to the current needs, that is possibly moving towards now renewable energy that I think at this point...
Talking about current needs and the transition to renewable energy, that brings up a lot of questions, especially given what is an onslaught by international mining companies on Africa and where we stand, and how the exploration, the mining will be conducted, and whether we shall be able to get as much as we ought to. That's something you will offer insight on a little bit later. But allow me ask Winnifred Ngabiirwe, when you sit these political actors at the convention and put the questions to them, I know in your mind, or in the minds of all the actors at Global Rights Alert, Center for Budget and Tax Policy, as well as other stakeholders, there is a certain train of thought that you want them to adopt, especially when it comes to utilization and the rollout of the frameworks for benefits from these minerals. Before they tell you what is in their manifestos, what do you want them to have in their manifestos?
I think the first thing is that government holds everything that we have in trust. So the natural resources belong to the people, but it's government that is in charge, that makes decisions consultatively. So natural resource development should be inclusive from the start, that people know what kind of resources are in their backyards, that as a country we know how much resources we own, and also take part in determining what kind of investments we need and how these investments are going to trickle down, to make sure that the benefits are trickling down to the ground. Whether it is in how much land is going to be acquired, whose land is going to be acquired, who is going to be compensated, who is going to take part in providing goods and services relating to that development. That's very, very important. But we also know that while we have laws and contracts and policies and all these frameworks governing our natural resources, it's rare that Muntu Wansi would understand what to do.
That is right.
So we end up having Muntu Wansi who is more of a victim than someone who informs the process. And that needs to change. And the other thing is really to be clear. What do we want to achieve as a country? What do we want to achieve as a local government in the next 15 years? And how do we achieve that? It means that we have to look at the investments we have to do for the people and in the people, so that they have the skills, the capacities, the finances, the frameworks that support them to get involved in the processes and to benefit, and also to enable them grow as a business. He talked about tin mining. And I think in his community, he would tell you that it's done by artisanals, majorly, who are not supported to grow, to become better middle group businessmen and women. So we'd want to see that political parties or governments or whoever is in charge has a plan. How do we transition this family from being a peasant mining family to another level? How do we enable them to access finances, technology, partnerships, markets, and collaborations that would enable them to move from stage 1 to stage 2. The second part is the money that we get from natural resources. While we haven't started getting, money from selling of oil, we have had capital gains tax, which is, the money that when a company sells its shares to another company, they pay a big tax to Uganda. Yeah. We have had royalties that are coming for the longest time from mining. We have had, so much money coming into the economy. But if you asked whether it's your legislator or a civil society leader or someone at the local level and said, what has this money done? They may not tell you what the money has done. But we know that money is coming, but we don't know what it's doing. And if we don't know, then there's going to be a lot of speculation. Then we know, of course, that Uganda is a corrupt country, that there's no lie about that. And then we begin fearing that perhaps the money from natural resources is already being diverted. And then we fear that once we start this large-scale production, it could actually, all be swindled, and the development dreams that we have will not be achieved. So clear, transparent mechanisms, clear accountability mechanisms, and understanding who plays which role. What role do local governments play? What role do central governments play? And what role does an ordinary citizen play to make sure that money is put to where it is supposed to be going? The other part is, of course, understanding our investors. When you speak with communities which host natural resources, they'll keep saying there are companies around, but we don't understand what kind of companies we have. I know that there are frameworks such as the EITI that tries to look into who is investing in our economy, in our mineral resources, but there's only a certain threshold that they consider. So there are small other companies that are doing more harm, that are smuggling gold, that are extracting without proper environmental safeguards, are wreaking havoc on our economy, in the communities, and polluting our environment. And we need to hold everyone to account. Whether you're a Ugandan company, whether you're a foreign company, whether you're a company whose name we can't even trace, we must have a system so that everything is clear. We understand which investors we have, what terms and conditions they have, how much money they should be paying to government, and for what purpose. Once we know that, then we're able to track and understand that developments are happening, and this is where the money is coming from. And then the last one would be really investing in young people. With the energy transition that my colleague talked about, there's lots of opportunities for innovation. All these many minerals, granite, rare earth, cobalt, copper, we have them on the continent, we have them in Uganda. How are we positioning our young people so that they lead the innovation towards energy transition? Because there's no expert in energy transition as of now, and we stand a very, very strong chance to influence and inform the world's transition. But how are we positioning, how are we skilling our young people so that they can innovate, they can, bring new technologies, they can harness their potential to contribute to development. Okay,
thank you very much. Patrick, under the aegis of the Center for Budget and Tax Policy, I do understand that you've come across certain details that would shock any Ugandan out there. Only 1 billion Uganda shillings of a potential 106 in mining royalties was disbursed. This is an issue of accountability. Talk to us about that, but also help us shine the spotlight on company identity, because that is a growing concern. There are so many people who are in the gold business, but we do not know exactly who they are. Not that they should come and tell us, but at least when you investigate, especially at the registrations bureaus, you seem not to figure out who is mining and under what mandate.
Yes, of course, I did allude to the fact that we have currently potential to collect over 106 billion Uganda shillings in royalties emanating from different mining concessions that we have. But what is on record as being remitted every year is a billion,
just a billion.
Yes, a billion about there. And it speaks to not only transparency, but then also the manner in which assessments are made. Because if I have potential to collect much more, but my assessments, I talk to a friend and he gives me a low assessment, it means that I will pay so less for a higher value that I'm looking at. And in which case then, we are saying, if the revenue from extractives remains low, but the community is losing, local governments are losing, government is losing, it ultimately perpetuates inequality, because some of the mining areas get disadvantaged because of the numerous activities that take place there. If you've gone to Mugende, for example, where gold extraction is made, if you go to Tororo area for limestone, you'll discover that all these areas where these activities are undergoing are constrained in many ways.
Are so poor, actually.
And people are poor. You cannot do any meaningful activities around those particular places. So they are deprived. So now if they earn so less for their own development to supplement what ordinarily they can be able to generate in other sources, then you are perpetuating inequality, because other areas will be having life moving on as normal, and then other areas are deprived. So we are saying there's need for transparency, that there's need for investing in proper, predictable, reliable assessments, so that actually the investors pay money that is equivalent to the kind of value that they're extracting from our ground. And then, of course, you know, Uganda in 2020 became a signatory to the EITI, the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiatives, where the country is expected to produce periodic reports regarding to how transparent they are in disclosing information in the extractive industry, in ensuring that citizens are part and parcel of the planning processes in the extractive industry. And of course, you know, the report after report do indicate that whereas Uganda has made positive strides in ensuring that they are transparent, there are still some gaps. And that connects to the question that we have just raised about the identity of these companies and the issue of the beneficial ownership, which is still a problem.
I mean, if you talked about the fact that a landowner has
has a 5% benefit.
You know, it's a case of saying, if we find gold in your compound, it belongs to the government. If we find
70%.
Something else, then you are illegally doing, you know?
Yes.
So what is the framework like?
So the framework is that if you find gold, using the example that you have given, if you find gold in your land, it then automatically now that land has become a public resource. And any revenue that comes from that land, 70% goes to the central government, 15% belongs to the district, 10% belongs to your sub-county, and only 5% goes to you if you're a legal owner of land, bona fide occupant of land. And I think also that one is there's a gray area there because of our challenges that we have with the land tenure system in Uganda. So if you're mixing, if you're having 5% and you're mixing the registered owner of land, bona fide occupants of land, chibanja holder and things like that. So there's potential for conflict. And I think this is something that we need also to clarify. But then we also need to marry the aspirations of the, of course, one would say that lawmakers treated oil resource very different from the minerals. But you realize that now it's 94% that goes to the central government and 6% that goes to local governments in case of petroleum resource. And then that means that if we have problems of transparency at the national level, then our local communities possibly will never benefit. That's right. At least now you have, under the Mining and the Minerals Act, we have about 30% now that goes to the local community. We're talking about 10%, 15% for the district, 10% for the sub-county, and then 5% to the land.
Welcome back from those updates on the campaign trail. Of course, the president there will be in Pakwach. We also heard from what the pulse is in Soroti. Just a reminder that in the Daily Monitor, you can get to know by GPS where your candidate is. That's in case you don't have the rota that was availed by the Electoral Commission on who should be where, when. This is important because there are incidents, for example, where supporters often prefer to go to a bigger ground, that is if the crowds are surging, when actually the Electoral Commission designated another ground. And that has found some of the candidates in the hairs of the police. And that is something we don't want you to be a part of, be law-abiding, but it's based on the fact that you have the information as provided by the Daily Monitor. Here in studio, we are trying to discuss extractives at the center of the political campaigns and how the manifestos of the various candidates do align themselves to this reality, the energy transition in Uganda, and indeed as it's happening across the globe. What is in it for us? How are the minerals managed? And what do you stand to benefit? That discussion having with Patrick Katabaazi Kiconco, a technical advisor at the Center for Budget and Tax Policy, as well as Winnifred Ngabiirwe, the Chief Executive Officer at Global Rights Alert. Ladies and gentlemen, before we went to the on-location reports and indeed into the break, we were trying to come to terms with aspects of accountability and transparency. Allow me just ask a question, especially with regard to the overall posture that Uganda has adopted in the energy transition agenda. The likelihood that for those that benefited from mining and exploring the natural resources are all of a sudden telling us that we must quickly pivot from that when we've just discovered resources including oil. I don't know how Uganda's posture affects the ability to play into the global agenda. I don't know, is it a discussion you've had at the Center for Budget and Tax Policy, Patrick?
I did allude to that in my first question, that globally there is urgent need to transition from the current dispensation in the way we handle extractives to pivot towards a climate change friendly approach, focusing more on renewable energy as opposed to relying heavily on non-renewable sources within the extractive industry. And that's the debate that we have had, and that's the debate that is ongoing. But of course, as you know, Uganda's circumstances are that we have just discovered oil. We are on the verge of having our oil drop. In fact,
the reason I asked that question again, or rather brought it up, is to understand, has our stance affected investment? For example, are there investors who think Uganda should take the call of the global actors?
No. I think there are those who have, and we have had a number of activists that have demanded that. But also the government of Uganda's stance has also been very clear that yes, some of this can wait. Let us also first deal with that, and we have seen that actually drive in investors, and that's why we are talking about the pipeline, the oil pipeline to Tanga. That's how we are talking about the oil refinery. That's how we are talking about the anticipated oil drops in 2026. So the stance has kept the hopes of the investors rather stable. But even when we do that, we cannot be blind to the fact that the world all over is moving away from what actually we are doing right now into a more less predictable, in our own circumstances, dispensation of renewable energy. What is the chorus like at Global Rights Alert?
So at the lower level, I think when we look at the energy transition in Uganda, it's not about fossil fuels only. Because as he mentioned, a lot of people are using charcoal and are using firewood. 90% of our energy cooking in the communities. In Kampala, we are using charcoal, and we are also cutting down trees for firewood. So there's need to transition from that to better cooking technology and options that are cleaner. So that is one of the aspects that Uganda's energy transition must look at. How do you access cleaner energy and avoid all the consequences that contribute to climate change from the cutting down of trees? At a national level, and with our fossil fuel investments, and fossil fuels really are oil and gas. Gas is not as clean as would want. So over the last 20 years, a lot of investments, a lot of research, a lot of trainings, a lot of money has gone into exploration, has gone into licensing, and has gone into these investments, including the ECOP that you talked about, the investments in the pipeline. And we know that climate change is real globally. So there's need to shift to better energy, to better greener and renewable energies. So should Uganda just abandon the oil wells and tell investors to pack their bags and go home? It doesn't make economic sense. It doesn't. It doesn't make economic sense that we just abandon. We have an energy transition plan. It has its gaps, but I think the plan indicates that we're going to use money from natural resources, from fossil fuels, to fuel our energy transition discourse. Okay. I think the question is, do we trust that the money from natural resources now will be properly utilized to give us a transition? That's one.
Let's give the government the benefit of the doubt.
I don't think we should blindly trust that this is going to happen. And that's why we are saying that citizens, investors, media, civil society, we need to ask, what does this energy transition for us as Uganda look like? If we have these minerals that we talked about, the lithium, the ones that are used in EVs, what chance do we have that we can, be better at managing the transition? Okay. What kind of investments, as I said, do we need? Because the reason that he talked about, opposition to ECOP, is the process. It's the process, how the process is managed. It's concerns around environmental rights. It's concerns around compensation. It's concerns around, safeguards for human rights. If these are not addressed in the fossil fuels, I kid you not, they're going to be worse in the energy transition investments. If land acquisition, if human rights, if the space for questioning is not appreciated, if transparency on the investments, the kind of contracts that we are having, the money where it is going, we are going to have the same problems transferred from the fossil fuel industry to the energy transition industry. Wow,
and I know those are the conversations that will be highlighting the 2025 Citizens Convention on Extractives. Just before, as we wrap this up, where and who should look out to attend?
As I mentioned, so we have physical and online. The physical one is at Steel, and we have, stakeholdered media, investors, civil society, students, communities impacted, development partners, and we also have an online registration that is going on, that is still open up to now. So please check Global Rights Alert handle, check Center for Budget Policy handle. You're going to find these registration links and take part in the conversation. All right, thank you very much, Winnifred Ngabiirwe and Patrick Katabaazi Kiconco, for your insights. Let's